to Mar-a-Lago.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President.
What is it, fantasy, boss?
After just 2 episodes of its 27th season, South Park has again reached a peak of cultural relevance that it hasn't touched in over 25 years. The show has been on air for almost as long as I've been alive, and I honestly can't remember a point in time where it hasn't been a part of my life. I'm probably as big of a fan of this show as you could possibly be without crossing a line, but with the new season shaping up the way it is, I don't know if there's ever been a better time to share my thoughts on what makes this show so good, and where it might sometimes fall short. Against the odds, the season 27 premiere of South Park successfully made it to air, and Jesus fucking Christ has it left an impact. The main plot follows Randy and the other inhabitants of South Park as they grapple with the fascistic overreach of the new president, Donald Trump 3.0. Consciously walking back their previous decision to use Garrison as the avatar for the president, realised in a scene where Randy and other angry townspeople bust down his door only to discover that he has nothing to do with the current administration, instead spending his time watching White Lotus with Rick. After this sudden realisation, we cut to the White House, and are treated to a fairly one-note but old-school style South Park portrayal of Trump, who proceeds to get into bed with the devil and threatens to sue almost everyone that he comes across, becoming the main focus of the episode. I believe this is only the 3rd time they've just plastered a real person's face on an animated character in the show, and even Satan seems to be conscious of his likeness to Saddam Hussein. A later mask reveal feels so likely that I'd be surprised if they don't at least try to subvert these expectations in some way as the season goes on. Sure, after a certain point in the episode, you might wish for slightly more depth with some of these jokes, but as simplistic as the comedic framing may be, it feels like a pitch-perfect jab in context, and is far more likely to get under the skin of a narcissist like Trump than a more thoughtful or subtle attack ever could. Nevertheless, that didn't stop the likes of Tim Pool from attempting to critique the episode from a comedic standpoint, and even offering Trey Parker and Matt Stone some writing advice in the process.
They're phoning it in.
Yeah.
Here's my pitch. I would have laughed my ass off if the episode started with Trump being asked about the Epstein files, panicking and shuffling all the press out of the room and banning them, saying, "You're banned, I'm going to sue you." And then runs to a bookshelf, pulls a book, the shelf opens up, he gets in an elevator, goes down to the basement, and there's Tulsi Gabbard, Rubio, and Trump trying to resurrect Mecca Epstein because they want to use the files and use the blackmail or something like that.
The forceful incorporation of Jesus Christ and Christianity in the school feels like yet another return to classic South Park, and the shift of PC principle to power Christian principle was an unexpected but hilarious turn. With all the small penis and Epstein jokes, people like Tim Pool also seem to have overlooked this particular angle of satire, but I found the mockery of Trump's promotion of a religion that he clearly has no interest in following to be another great comedic fit for this episode, linking directly into the lawsuit threatened against the show and Paramount. The scene where Jesus suddenly breaks the fourth wall and decides to talk about CBS, Colbert, and the threat of cancellation was amazing, and felt like the turning point of the episode, addressing the very legitimate possibility that everything they were doing might actually result in the show being cancelled. The words of Christ are surprisingly enough to wake South Park up, with Randy, the mayor, and the rest of the town now taking every possible measure to appease Trump and settle his potential lawsuit for approximately $1.5 billion. For as much content as they managed to pack into this part of the story, there is also a B-plot, which follows Cartman as he contends with the reality that in 2025 America, his role as a spoiled edgelord may now be irrelevant, as well as inverting Cartman's season 19 storyline as he tried to adjust to South Park's dawn of the PC era. This episode reuses one of Matt and Trey's most commonly utilised tools by positioning Cartman as an avatar for the show itself, tying into Parker and Stone's public admissions that the particular brand of satire and edgy humour the show has traditionally brought has become increasingly difficult to sustain when the world around the show has devolved beyond even the most far-reaching satire. With Cartman and Butters, part of me was just excited to see a classic pairing that has made for some of the best episodes in the show's history, but aside from a couple of funny, recycled quips, there wasn't really enough time for them to fit much of a story in here, or to really utilise its main characters in a way the show does best. And still, the final scene with Cartman and Butters, existing as a placeholder for the show itself, attempting to kill themselves, worked on a number of levels. And even though I was smiling, I left the episode feeling like there was a chance there may never be another.
Yep, sweet death is about to come. I love you, man.
After the town agrees to settle the lawsuit with Trump, the screen cuts to black, with some white text appearing that says, "Obligatory Trump PSA 1 of 50. Now, I'd recently been thinking about all of the money that Trey Parker and Matt Stone spent on creating the most advanced, state-of-the-art deepfake studio in the world, for a show that unfortunately didn't see the light of day. Obviously, they've previously deepfaked a version, or multiple versions of Donald before in their short-lived internet show Sassy Justice. But I always wondered if they might actually do anything with that studio, and I guess they've finally got their money's worth, although I have no idea if they were even using the same technology at this point. I was just dying laughing at this in a way that I don't think any other show or person could replicate. Saying someone has a small dick is the oldest and dumbest joke in the book, but showing the current president in this light, given the context of the episode and the very real possibility of retaliation, I don't know if there's a more intelligent joke that would have made me laugh this hard. Weirdly, it feels like it's been a really long time since anyone got genuinely offended by anything South Park's done, and the fact that the person being offended is the President of the United States makes it all the more hilarious. Not unlike the censorship campaign against the South Park movie, or the time they got sued by the Church of Scientology, or even the time they tried to show the Muslim Prophet Muhammad in the face of numerous credible death threats. This episode felt like a huge cultural moment for South Park. Oh yeah, there was also that time they said Bin Laden had a micropenis. Clearly a recurring gag for Matt and Trey. One of the consequences of making an episode like this, focusing solely on the overtly satirical, fourth wall breaking side of the show, is that it ends up feeling more like a statement, admittedly a hilarious one, than a great episode of South Park. I think a lot of the people who have decided to check this episode out, after probably not watching the show since Bigger, Longer and Uncut was released in cinemas, assume that this is all that the show has to offer. An impression that Matt and Trey have usually tried to steer people away from. When it's firing on all cylinders, South Park perfectly balances real-world events and contemporary satire with character-specific comedy that would be hilarious even in a vacuum. Given the circumstances around the release of this episode, and the implicit threat the Trump administration poses to the future of the show, and of course the world, I can understand why Trey and Matt felt compelled to make this episode. It's not necessarily their funniest or most insightful work, but for what they were aiming to do, they were beyond successful. I'd be surprised if this was the last that we saw of Mel Gibson, Trump, and of course his micropenis. But knowing the show as I do, going forward there's likely to be more of a focus on the inherent humour that comes from placing these characters in sometimes ridiculous, sometimes absurdly relatable situations, rather than satirising the politics of the day.
No politics.
No process.
None of that shit. We're not doing any of that shit.
When an early trailer dropped for this episode, given Trey Parker's recent admission about the season promo being 100% fake, I assumed that he was simply trolling the right-leaning online communities that attempted to discredit the season premiere. Seeing Cartman as Charlie Kirk was a surreal moment for me. But given the way the real-life Kirk immediately recognised himself, decided to change this to his profile picture, and claimed this depiction as a badge of honour, I thought the funniest thing that they could do would be to not include anything from the clip in the episode, and instead to have Cartman doing something completely unrelated. But despite an early misdirect, that was definitely not the case.
Jeremiah 1:5, I made you in the womb. South Park gets this right. In fact, I think they've been watching a lot of Charlie Kirk videos.
Like most people, I assume Parker and/or Stone discovered Charlie Kirk while scrolling through TikTok or YouTube Shorts, seeing a glimpse of one of his debates with college kids. This kind of content is likely to at least catch most people's attention, and as depressing as it is, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that people like Kirk have reached the point of parody on South Park. Luckily, I think they did a great job at pointing out how moronic this recent phenomenon has become. Episode 2 opens in the school, with Kyle, Wendy and Stan talking about their disgust with the sexist, anti-Semitic language and behaviour being used by a mystery child in the school, who you would obviously expect to be Cartman. This person is revealed to in fact be Clyde, who's recently been getting a lot of traction on social media for his podcast and abortion debates with female students at the school. Following on from his storyline in the season premiere, Cartman immediately begins feeling like his shtick has been ripped off by these debaters, and tries to get in on the action himself. Podcasts and debate content have surprisingly remained an untapped mine for South Park until now, despite being rich with potential for parody and satirization. The early scene where Clyde debates one student after the other, each ending with a one-liner followed by
student totally pwned,
was a perfect way to set this storyline up, in what is essentially a direct parody of these conservative TikTok debates, most notably popularized by Charlie Kirk.
You can whine about American oppression all you want, but you're using an iPhone made by the free market to complain about a system that gave it to you. Girls have it way easy in America, and that's just the truth.
Woke student totally pwned.
With a new receding haircut, Cartman kicks Clyde out of his chair, claiming his place as the one true master debater. Cartman continues to embody Charlie Kirk, and while they don't really rip on him as much as I would personally like, the tiny details like him annoyingly adjusting his water bottle every 5 seconds were hilarious, and really added a lot to the parody for me. He becomes completely addicted to these online debates, and they set up an amusing angle where his mum gets increasingly frustrated by him master debating college girls, even when he's on the toilet and long past his bedtime. It's ridiculous, but still a funny piece of commentary on the new reality that probably does exist now for many American parents. With so many kids so heavily addicted to social media, and many of them actually being influencers themselves, porn is probably the very last thing on their minds. Cartman is eventually nominated for what they call a Charlie Kirk Award, finally mentioning the small-faced, small-toothed conservative commentator by name, but somewhat predictably, he loses this to Clyde. There were a lot of funny Cartman moments in this episode, especially some of his recurring talking points about abortion, and of course that dumbass haircut, but I guess I would have liked a more definitive conclusion to this side of the story, that maybe took a final jab at Charlie Kirk and other master debaters. The other half of this episode follows Mr. Mackey, aka Dr. Phil, after he loses his job as a counsellor and decides to join ICE. We're introduced to 53-year-old botched plastic surgery abomination and US Secretary of Home Security Kristi Noem, who soon becomes a target of much abuse for Parker and Stone as the episode continues. And rightly so. Mackey is shown a training video which basically just shows ICE deporting a bunch of brown people, and then Noem brutally executing a bunch of innocent puppies. Of course they can't exactly show her gunning down innocent men and children, and there wouldn't really be much comedy in that, so I think manipulating audience sympathy for these ridiculously cute animals was a crass but kind of genius way to depict the evil that these people represent. As someone that grew up with this show, I obviously also have a pretty sick sense of humour, and couldn't help but laugh at the shock of seeing these dogs be brutally executed one after the other. Another joke around Noem is that her face constantly droops like Michael Jackson, and at a couple of points falls off completely. Genuinely hilarious stuff. After going on a number of ICE raids that play out almost exactly how you might expect, Mr. Mackey is eventually flown out to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump and his sidekick, J.D. Vance. There's a recurring gag that I haven't yet mentioned, which also links to the episode title, around the fact that everyone seems to be more than willing to compromise their morals in order to make their monthly nut.
Now let's take care of that nut for you.
Oh my God! I just want to go. This place is gross.
Would you like me to apply the baby oil to Satan's asshole, boss?
Mr. Mackey finally realises that being able to get his nut might not be worth getting into bed with Satan, and as he tries to flee, he sees Clyde in another room, finally remembering his true calling as a counsellor. He lectures Clyde that going against what he actually believes and master debating to college girls just to get his nut isn't a good way to live. Obviously it's as dumb and euphemistic as ever, but I really do love this fucking show. Except for the specials, episodes of South Park don't usually tie everything up at the end in the way the show used to. But at this point, it's clear Trey and Matt feel compelled to continue with the more serialized format they've adopted in recent years. There's definitely a sweet spot between self-contained versus continuous storylines, and I think so far in season 27, they're doing a great job at finding it. This episode was another banger, and even though they haven't yet taken their foot off the political pedal, I was pleased that they didn't forget to give us more than a few hilarious character moments as well.
We as conservatives, we have thick skin, not thin skin, and you can make fun of us, it doesn't matter. And until next time, I hope all of you also become master debaters for truth.